was in kindergarten, I was forced to swallow a thumbtack. I wanted to share my experience on the off chance that it might help someone out there. It's a long shot, but I figured why not. When I was a kid, I went to kindergarten in a school called the Sakura Group. They had one simple law, and that was, you cannot tell a lie. There was an even weird song about it that the teacher made us sing in the morning at school. I can't remember the words, perhaps because I wish to forget them, but to my recollection it went something like this. If you tell a lie, then you have to swallow 1,000 needles. We sang that song all the time, and I never liked it. The meaning inferred was that if you break a promise or lie, then you'll be hurt just as much as the person you lied to will be hurt. It's a very old rhyme from the 1800s or something. When I was in kindergarten, I didn't really understand the meaning. You know, like Red Riding Hood, you never felt bad for the grandma and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes in class we watched this kids' TV show called Mr. Nopo. I haven't seen it since kindergarten. Anyway, the episode that we watched was about him making animals out of old milk cartons. We were allowed to do the same thing tomorrow in class, and I was really excited about it. So our teacher says, "All right, everyone, please bring a milk carton tomorrow so we can make our animals. Don't forget to ask your parents when you get home. Don't forget it's got to be a milk carton." Everyone in the classroom, including myself, responded with, "Yes, miss." I got home as fast as I could, and I asked my parents for a milk carton. My mom told me that we had only just opened the milk in a refrigerator, so I couldn't use that one. She then produced an empty soy milk carton from the garbage, and she said it was the same kind of thing. The next day, I proudly brought my soy milk carton to kindergarten, but I was told that my milk carton wasn't right. When you think about it, the cartons are slightly different, and perhaps the paper color or the thickness. Mr. Nopo didn't tell us on the TV how to make an animal out of a soy milk carton. He told us to use a normal milk carton. I guess that's why the kindergarten teacher got angry with me that day. "Hey, this isn't a milk carton. Everyone in the classroom, including you, promised to bring a milk carton to class today, right? Why have you brought something entirely different?" She scolded me. I was too young and too shy and too nervous to even respond. I just sat there, almost in shock. She turned to her desk at the head of the class, rooted around her desk drawer, then stormed towards my desk with something in her hand. It turned out to be a thumbtack case. She stopped at my desk with a half smile and turned to the other children in my class and proudly declared, "Everyone, your fellow student has told a lie today. He promised to bring a milk carton, but he's brought something entirely different to class today. So, what do we do when someone lies? Can anyone remember?" That's right. They have to swallow 1,000 needles, don't they? I was so dumbstruck that I remained silent. I was half expecting it to be a big joke, but I could see by the look in my teacher's eyes that it was far from funny to her. It was unthinkable, yet it was happening to me. I couldn't say a word. She approached me and opened the case of pins and said, "You broke a promise, so please get ready to swallow them." I couldn't. Look, everyone. He can't even commit to accepting his punishment, and the poor boy can't do it. When you think about it, 1,000 is too many, isn't it? Okay, that's okay. Don't worry. I'll change the rules just this one time. Not 1,000, but 100. Off you go. She hadn't forgiven me. She approached me with the pin in her hand. She held my nose and made me open my mouth. I thought I could escape her punishment if I pretended to swallow, but that didn't work. I held the thumbtack between my back teeth and made a swallowing gesture. I thought it would work, but I was wrong again. She looked at me and then slapped me in the face, and the force of her slap caused me to spit out the thumbtack and it tumbled down onto my desk. The classroom was completely silent. It was as if though you could hear a pin drop. She snatched up the pin and jabbed it at my nose. Not even one. You can't even manage one. If you lie, this is your medicine. The other option is death, and everyone knows this. I'm trying to teach you the importance of not telling lies. She got so angry, she dropped the thumbtacks all over the floor. I was made to find the thumbtack that I had in my mouth. I remember crying, and the sound of my sobbing being the only sound in that classroom. The fun I assumed that we would have that day creating animals out of milk cartons was completely destroyed. Everyone was looking at me with cold eyes like I had caused all of this, and I was young enough to believe that it was actually my fault. The kindergarten teacher couldn't determine which thumbtack I had in my mouth, so she threw them all away. And that was what saved me that day, I guess, and I'm so glad that I spat it out. I don't know if anyone else has told on her. I've never spoke about this until literally right now, and this happened many, many years ago. And these memories still stir up trauma deep within inside me. This terrible thing happened about 15 years ago. I was 20 years old and living alone. I came home from work, checked the mail as I usually do, and found a sealed letter. It was a blank envelope, and inside there were 2 tickets to a concert and a letter. A love letter. The writer's feelings for me were pretty clear, and it went something like this. Let's meet at the concert. I'll keep my identity hidden until we meet, and I'm sure you'll be surprised. I'm someone you know. I had a boyfriend, and I had no idea who wrote this. I thought for a moment that I had won a competition or something, and I do remember entering one. But then, instantly, I remembered that I entered that competition only this morning, so there's no way that the tickets could be in my letterbox by the evening. Something wasn't right, so I just didn't go to the concert. I thought that if it truly is someone that I know, as soon as they revealed themselves to me, then I'd apologize, and I was sure that if they are a kind and decent person, that they'd understand my caution. The day after that concert, I found a threatening-looking letter stuffed into my letterbox. Why didn't you come? You idiot. Don't pretend like you aren't interested. The first letter was gentlemanly, in a sense, but this was the complete opposite. Back then, I didn't have a mobile phone. As soon as I returned home from work, the moment I closed my front door, my phone rang, and I picked it up, and then the other party hung up. And this happened often. I didn't get a call or a letter every single day. It was kind of irregular. I would get one week, and then the next week I'd get like 3 or 4. And this kind of thing went on for about 3 months. It was incredibly creepy, so I actually decided to move away. Finally, I thought I was at peace. Well, that's what I thought until 1 month after I moved into a new place. The same thing started happening again. I didn't get a call this time, but I found another blank envelope in my letterbox. There was no sender's name or addressee name, so it must have been posted by hand. When I saw this, it was clear to me that my stalker had found my new home. I was really scared. I took the letter to the police station. Ignoring the other party is the most effective thing you can really do. As soon as he realizes that he's being ignored, he'll stop. This advice from the police really doesn't solve anything, I thought. And then the officer said, "Look, women who live alone often get lonely, right? And sometimes single ladies have a tendency to allow harmless antics to get blown out of proportion, He laughed and he just pretended that I was delusional. In those days, the word stalker wasn't widely recognized in Japan. The laws in place aren't what they are today, and I felt so sad that he didn't even try to help me at all. He didn't back me up. He actually took the stalker side in the situation. I'll just move again, I thought, but around that time, my boyfriend and I were talking about marriage, so I just moved back in my parents' house while we talked it over. My parents' home was in the same prefecture, but it was way out in the sticks, so commuting to work was a huge pain. I thought that at least I'd be rid of the stalker, though. I was wrong. Carnage and bloodshed were right around the corner for me. I finished working and headed towards the train station. On the way, a man stood blocking my way. When I tried to go one way, he stood in the way, and then I tried to go the other way. He blocked me again. He towered over me. He was peering down at me. His jaw seemed to hang open, and he was breathing through his mouth. It's him. It's my stalker, I thought, but I didn't recognize him. "Why didn't you come?" he muttered. For a moment, I didn't know what he was talking about, and then suddenly I remembered. The tickets. I knew that he wanted an answer, and I couldn't say a word. It was rush hour. People were all around us. I wasn't terrified, but I was scared. It was risky. So I said in quite a loud voice for the benefit of the people around me, "Excuse me. Please let me pass." As I said this, the people around all looked in our direction, and then my stalker did something unexpected. He turned and ran into the busy street. And right before my eyes, he was hit by a car. You may think this is quite cold-hearted, but I just thought as I rode the train home, it's not my fault. I was kind of happy that it might actually all be over. And in case you're wondering, he lived. However, one of the stalker's colleagues saw this all unfold. This guy said that it looked like I was having a lover's quarrel, and when the stalker got hit by the car, he said I pretended not to notice or feigned ignorance and just walked off. And this rumor was spread around by the stalker's coworker. Every year, my company and other companies in the same line of work have a sports day for a bit of friendly competition. I remember talking to a few people, but there are so many people that I can't remember who I spoke to very well. Apparently, this is how I met my stalker. I'm usually really good at remembering faces, but I didn't recognize him at all. I found out that he came to my company a few times a week. I work in the personal department, hidden away in a small office, so I don't often see people other than the ones I immediately work with. Yet the rumors about me grew, and they said that we would often meet at work. Of course, I denied these false allegations and stated the fact that I was the victim of him stalking me. But I wasn't convinced that anyone actually believed me. Another shock was in store for me. I was dumped. Although my boyfriend and I were officially engaged, we set up a date for me to be introduced to his parents in his hometown, and at that point we would officially announce our plans to engage. The rumors had reached their ears before I arrived. As I said before, the suffering caused by the stalkers wasn't well documented in Japan at the time. As they said, "You must have given this guy a sign that he had a chance with you. Somehow you must have given him the wrong idea. You caused his actions. Are you sure that there was nothing going on between you two?" With this doubt and distrust imposed upon me, my boyfriend was persuaded by his parents to end our relationship, and I couldn't believe it. I wanted to escape. I wanted a fresh start, so I resigned from my job as well. It's been over 15 years since this happened, and the wounds caused by the stalker are still very fresh. My desire to work hard at the assumption that I would eventually get married and spend my life with my husband is completely gone now. I came to the conclusion that I would probably end up alone, all because of that stalker. And so far, I'm right. My hobby is hiking. The kinds of mountains I like to hike are ones with no roads, no other people, and where wild vegetables grow, off the beaten track hiking. Sometimes on these hikes I come across strange or unusual things. For example, once I saw an albino antelope, and on another occasion I saw an eagle the size of an actual grown man. However, the weirdest incident was the time that I came across a family, and possibly far into the mountains. It was a weekday afternoon, and I was hiking along the prefectural border between Miyagi, Yamagata, and Akita. There was a forest full of huge beech trees, which made it quite easy to walk as it got dark. This is a place that not an everyday person would actually hike. Only local people to this mountain range would probably know about it, or people like me who enjoy hiking and actually have GPS. It was pretty secluded. As I was walking along a small ridge, I noticed a small stream flowing below. At the edge of the stream, I saw a man standing there. I first thought, he must be doing a spot for fishing. But then I noticed that he wasn't alone. 4 other people stood with him. They were all standing in the river. I couldn't see clearly because they must have been about 100 meters away, but I was sure that there were 4 people stood in the river. 2 appeared to be children. I don't know why, but it was so creepy that I actually thought that they were all on the verge of actually ending all of their lives together as a family. I mean, to come all the way out here to the secluded mountain river alone, so close to dark. If that was the case, I planned to intervene and try to talk them out of it. I hope that wasn't the case, of course, but either way, I was interested in finding out what was going on, so using my binoculars, I took a closer look. Just as I thought, there were 4 people facing away from me, 2 children and 2 adults. I watched for a moment, waiting for them to turn my way so I could catch a glimpse of their faces, but they didn't move at all. I must have been watching them for 5 minutes, and yet they didn't move. And then it dawned on me. They're mannequins. Someone must have put them here as a prank, or maybe as a trap. I decided to go in for a closer look since my first thought was to check on the family anyway. I quietly crept closer. I didn't want to be noticed. In my mind, I was planning my escape route. Jumping in the river itself crossed my mind if something terrible was to happen. As I drew closer, my predictions came true. There were 4 mannequins before me, 2 adults and 2 children, all dressed up, out here in the middle of nowhere. I was disgusted and my body shivered. I couldn't think of logically why they would be here. I thought to myself, if someone did this, they must be absolutely not right in the head. I was now close enough to see the details on the mannequins, and each one had a name painted on its front. Each mannequin was peppered with small holes, bullet holes, like a shotgun shell. The piece de resistance was a broken box cutter blade sticking out of one of the child mannequins' backs. And that was enough for me. I was terrified, and I began to make my way back down the mountain. Even as I write this now, I'm shivering. Those creepy mannequin dolls with marks all up and down them, someone carried them over there to do whatever they did to them. But why? These were not light mannequins, they were clearly bulky and heavy wooden ones. If I had to carry them myself, I would have to stop for a while to take a rest. But there were 4 of them. It would take forever to carry them. This all happened about 2 years ago, and I guess they're probably still out there. This happened a few years ago, but I still remember it as if though it was yesterday, and I'll never forget what I saw that night. I was at home doing nothing in particular when my friend called and he said that he wanted to get out of his house and asked if I wanted to hang out. I thought, why not? Now this was about 3 a.m., so I'm not even sure why I was still awake, but I was, and he said that he would come and pick me up in his car. We were driving around the city for a while and my friend suddenly said, "Hey, let's go to the wharf." So that's where we headed. Down by the pier area by the wharf there is an old factory. In the daytime, trucks are in and out of there all the time, and it's pretty busy in that area, but at night it's quite quiet. The roads by the wharf are really wide and straight. On weekend nights, you can sometimes see people racing there, but that night we were the only ones on the road, and it made for quite tense atmosphere. We headed to the wharf like we were being drawn there, and we stopped at the traffic light, and a car pulled up alongside us. I can't remember the model or the color of the car. I guess it was more like a minivan than a car, come to think of it. Either way, it was bigger than a normal car. I'm in the passenger seat and my friend is driving. The light changes color and I look at the car and the people in it. I got a really weird vibe from one of the guys in the car, so I just kept watching. I couldn't put my finger on what was weirding me out about these guys at first, but then I noticed one of the guys in the back seat. I could do little else but wonder what was bugging me, and then it dawned on me. The reason I felt something was off about the guy was because I couldn't see the bottom half of his face. It was as if though it was completely black, like it was missing. Why was it black, I wondered. I thought that I was hallucinating or I was just tired. Still, I kept looking at the guy. I was curious. I locked eyes with him and then the car sped away before the lights changed, and they ran the red light. In the split second that I saw that guy, his eyes flashed my way, and I had never seen a look of such desperation before or since. His eyes seemed to scream at me. He pressed his face against the window, and then it was like he was pulled backwards before the car sped off. When he was close against the window, I realized that the black thing I saw was tape, covering his mouth. It all happened in less than a couple of seconds. The look of fear in his eyes stayed with me, and I was deeply concerned. The minivan sped away into the night towards the wharf. I had heard rumors that Yakuza used to hang out there and are responsible for some of the missing person cases in the area and for some of the bodies that are found washed up in the wharf over the years. Some people say that the wharf is haunted because of this too. It's always been known as a kind of test of courage to head there at night on weekends, but I had never spoken to anyone who went down there on a weekday night. We don't know what goes on down there when the town sleeps, but I think I saw a glimpse of it that night. Could this be a prank? I really hope that's what I saw. I guess that's the only outcome that I can live with. I didn't get the license plate and we didn't follow the van. It just happened so quickly, and now I'm older and know that if I saw it again I would be more proactive, and this weighs heavily on me still to this day. I told the police a day or two after it happened and I never heard anything back from them. And when I think back to that dark summer night and those split seconds that I saw the man with desperation in his eyes and tape covering his mouth, I can't help but shudder. When I first got into high school, I got into trouble a few times and ended up skipping school regularly. I would stay at home and watch TV or just play games. I used to take care of my younger brother a lot too. At night, I used to go out skateboarding or go over to a friend's house to play more games. I probably wasn't the best babysitter, I just left him to his own devices most of the time. One evening, I was having dinner with my little brother and we were both watching TV together. I should mention that my mother was in and out of the hospital at the time. I guess that was maybe why I was acting out at school. Every night it was just me and my little brother since Dad worked late. After he finished eating, he suddenly said, "Oh yeah, the phone. I need the phone." My younger brother was 4 years old, by the way. "Hey, where? What? What are you talking about?" I need the phone," he kept repeating while running off. Our home phone was in the hallway and he ran in that direction. I was confused, so I went after him. He was trying to reach the phone on the phone table in the hallway. He was on his tiptoes and he nearly had it. He was whining, asking for the phone. No, you can't play with that. Who are you trying to call anyways? Are you trying to talk to Mom? I mean, she's not coming back from the hospital yet, buddy." He started to cry and he shouted at me to hurry up and give him the phone. I had to pick him up and drag him back to the living room kicking and screaming, and he really wanted the phone. Just then, the phone began to ring. The second my brother heard it, he started struggling against me more, screaming about how it was for him. I said to wait there, I'll go get the phone for you, okay, because you can't reach it. And he suddenly stopped his tantrum and then waited patiently for me to bring him the phone. It was pretty weird, but it was about to get a whole lot weirder. "Hello?" I said as I answered the phone. I'll keep my brother's name just anonymous, just in case. Yeah. Can I speak to Anon, please?" The voice belonged to an older woman in about her 50s, I'd say. It wasn't a voice that I recognized. It was really strange. I wonder what the hell a stranger in their 50s would want to speak to a 4-year-old about. "Can I ask who's calling?" I asked. A friend." "Huh? A friend?" I hung up and was really confused. I walked back into the lounge and I saw my little brother sat there on the sofa, grinning at me. Did you give our number out to some old lady?" I asked him, and he said nothing. "Have you been speaking to this old lady?" And then he said, "I don't understand. I don't know. I hate this." I walked back to the phone and checked the caller ID for the number. It was our area code, but I didn't recognize the number. I tried to call it back a few times, but every time I tried, the line was busy. Meanwhile, my mom came home from the hospital and I explained what had happened. Mom looked pretty freaked out. She was just as unaware of this as I was. From that day onwards, we got calls from that number every now and then. It was weird. Anytime my parents went out, about 2 minutes later, the phone would ring. My little brother would start shouting and screaming for the phone, and then when I answered, the old lady hung up. Whenever I called back then, the line was always busy. I moved the phone to a really high place that I could only reach when I stood on a stool. I didn't want that horrible voice speaking to my little brother again. A few weeks later, I had used the phone to speak to the police about the old lady and the nuisance calls. Once again, I was home alone with my brother. My parents weren't home and I can't remember where they were. I was in the bathroom and I had heard the phone ringing. I thought, it's that old woman again. I heard my brother running to the hallway. Like I said, I was in the bathroom, so I just thought to myself, oh well, he can't reach it. And then I heard this horrible clattering sound. My brother then said, "Hello? Hello?" When I came out of the bathroom, I was surprised to see that he had pulled the phone line with enough momentum to bring the phone down from the high place that I had put it. I ran straight over to him, and he was lying on the floor, happily chatting away. "Yeah, sure. Yeah, come and play. Yeah." I snatched the phone out of his hand and put it to my ear, but all I heard was a dial tone. And from that day forward, my brother never jumped up and down and went crazy when the phone rang, and there were no further calls from that weird lady's number either. 7 years have passed since then, and my brother says that he doesn't even remember this at all. And any time my parents or I bring it up, he always scowls and accuses us of lying. I'm worried about what might have happened, and I'm worried that he might be hiding something. How did that old lady get our number? Click the join button to become a member today for exclusive content. This happened about 10 years ago. Back then, I was really into dating websites, and before the app days, and before any kind of safety was in place. I would do quite well on these sites. I matched with people who were using the dating sites for the same reason I was, if you get my drift, and we were looking for the same thing. I liked life. I was riding on my own confidence, daring myself to go bigger and bigger with these wild meetups. I was surprised one day to get matched with a 19-year-old, and her first message said, "Give me your email address." I was fine with the direct approach, so I sent it straight over to her. "You sound fun. I want to hang out with you." I couldn't believe my luck. I smirked and said to myself, "You can do that today if you want, honey. I'm in good shape." And I decided to reply with, "Sounds great, but why don't we exchange photos before we meet?" I sent the best photo of myself I could, slightly fraudulent as it was a couple of years old, but hey, I bet I wasn't the only one on that site doing that, you know? Shortly after, I received a photo back, and she was hot. I punched the air in excitement. Life was sweet. She had a pretty sweet tan and a cute pouty look on her face, and I was into that. Home run, I thought. We were both really into meeting up, so we set up a date, and things moved quickly. She would send emails like, "I don't want to go very far, I only have a moped. It would be sweet if you drove to come get me." This was kind of annoying, so I wanted to avoid driving so I could drink, but since she was pretty hot, I guess I could just get loaded when I get home later, I thought. I decided that I'd take her out to karaoke and dinner, and then if there was a chance, drive her somewhere secluded with her, and you know the rest. The day of the date arrived, and we planned on meeting at a home improvement store's parking lot at 6. It was kind of weird, but okay. I got myself looking good and brought protection, and I was sure that I was going to have a great night. I just hoped that the car would be big enough. Then my brother said that he had to use our shared car. This was such a pain in the butt, as I would have to take our older, crappier van. And there went my chances, I thought. I told her that I would be in a white minivan. Then my brother, as if though he was some type of saint, told me that he didn't need to use the sedan anymore. Thanks, bro, I thought. You're a total lifesaver. The sedan was way cooler looking and roomy, and the game was back on. I had a great feeling about the night ahead, and things were going my way. I was set to arrive at the home improvement store at about 5 minutes ahead of the arranged meeting time. I thought that I would drive around the parking lot to see if she was early too. When I was about to turn into the parking lot, I got an email on my mobile phone from her saying, "You here yet?" And I replied with, "I'll be there soon." I couldn't see anyone in the parking lot, so I didn't really understand why she was asking me if I was here yet. And then I saw a woman about 10 meters up ahead. I actually shuddered because this seemed all wrong. She didn't mention anything about bringing a friend, and this was beginning to look a lot more sinister. I saw her sat in a minivan's passenger seat chatting to some guy in the driver's seat. I drove a little away from the van and parked up and pulled my hat down over my face. I wanted to see what would happen when I messaged her next. She got out of the minivan and spoke to someone in the parking lot next to it. Then 2 other men came over and spoke to her, and this really sent chills up my spine. It was so crazy. What were her plans for me? Extortion? Blackmail? She then sent me another email that I got a notification for. "Well, are you close?" I replied, I got a stomach ache and I'm in the bathroom." A moment or two after I saw that it went through, I saw a couple of men jump out of the minivan and walk into the home improvement store. They were probably going to check the bathrooms. "Where are you?" she replied. I stopped off at a convenience store nearby. She must have called the men back because in a matter of moments, they were all in the van and the car again. They left and headed the way that I came. I drove in the opposite direction as fast as I could. I sent her an email saying that I was too sick to meet up, and I never heard from her again. I have learned since not to give out personal information and always make sure the meeting place is somewhere neutral with lots of people nearby. Don't bring too many personal possessions and items like ID, and if something doesn't feel right, always alert the police. This happened to me when I was in elementary school. It would usually take me about 30 minutes to walk home from school. I lived close to the seafront, so it was always a nice walk. On the way home, there were 2 sets of traffic lights on a big 2-lane road. My school was by the seaside, and I loved it that way. I used to walk in a group of close friends of about 3 or 4. We used to chat about the latest fads and fashions, homework, and all that sort of thing. It was a really fun time when I think back to it. It was summertime in my 3rd year of elementary school. As usual, I was waiting for my friends outside of school by the playground after school finished. I noticed an old man in a white car staring at me through his open window. At first, I thought he was a child because he was very short and petite. He was so sunken in his seat that I could barely even see him, not to mention that he had this cap pulled down just above his eyes. I remember that cap had a sort of logo on it. His skin was slightly sunburned, too. He looked to be between 40 to 50 years old. He fully rolled down his window, leaned over the passenger seat, and called out, "Hi, I'm so sorry to tell you, but your dad has been involved in an accident. He's been rushed to the hospital. I'm one of your dad's friends, and I'm here to take you to see him in the hospital." Of course, when you hear something as terrible as that, it's going to shock you. But I had never met this old man before. When you are younger and an adult tells you to get in their car, you listen, right? I didn't know what to do. What was I supposed to do right now? My legs were frozen solid. At this point, when my friends arrived, I began to tell her about what I had just heard from the old man in the car, but our conversation was interrupted. "Please hurry up. Your dad's waiting for you," ordered the old man in the white car. My friend and I said nothing. "Your dad asked me to come and get you," he called out again. Those words upset me. I didn't know him, but I was so worried about my father. I was only in the 3rd year of elementary school, so I was so confused and very wary of the situation, and something in my gut told me that this was very dangerous. The standoff between us and the old man in the car went on for about 10 minutes, until he said, "Well, fine, don't get in. I hope your dad forgives you." He rolled up the window and started the car and drove off. I watched the car drive away, and I had conflicting feelings of guilt for not accepting the ride with him to see my father in the hospital, yet I strongly felt that it wasn't safe. After a while, my friend and I decided to head home as usual. I was nervous all the way home as we walked along the seafront. I got home and spoke to my mother about what had happened. She confirmed that the creepy old man was a liar, and she reported this to the school and the police. She looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm so glad you didn't get in that man's car." The next day at school, all the students were gathered and given a warning about that strange man and told what happened to me. The teacher explained that if you see an older man wearing a cap in a white car and he tells you that a family member or friend had gotten into an accident and that he'll take you to the hospital, don't believe him and get away from him as fast as possible. I found out at a later date that a child had gone missing not too far from our school and that the child's whereabouts were still unknown. It was said that the child had been tricked into getting into a stranger's car and the police were currently conducting an investigation. I don't know how that case ended, but I do pray that the child was returned safely and the perpetrator arrested. What would have happened to me if I'd gotten in that car? I'm much older now, but I think about this often, and when I do, I always break out into goosebumps. This happened 7 years ago. After I graduated from high school, I started living alone for the first time. It wasn't like I was living in a new area and strange area. I actually lived about a half an hour away from my parents' house, so I knew this area quite well. I had been living alone for about 3 months, and things were going really well. I used to walk to work and back home through a local park, usually at around 6 p.m. I was always aware of my surroundings. Well, at least I like to think so. I think it was this awareness that helped me find the purse that day. I happened to look down and just off to the side of the public path through the park, and there was a red purse. I bent down to pick it up, and I was surprised to feel that it was actually heavy. There was a bunch of credit cards in there and some money, not just coins, but bills too. The thought to just take the purse home and empty it of its contents flashed across my mind. It wasn't a bad idea. When you hear the end story of this, you might actually think to yourself, why didn't he do that? It would have saved him a lot of trouble. But I wasn't to know what trouble I was about to get myself into. I can tell you now that the main reason as to why I didn't keep the purse's contents for myself was because I was kind of lonely and hadn't met any women since I moved. I had this romantic idea that I would turn in the purse at the police station and they would let me know when someone came to claim it. I thought that it was a fun idea that I didn't realize at the police station I turned it into made me fill out a bunch of forms just to hand some lost property in. It felt really unnecessary, but since I just picked the purse up off the ground, I guess they had no way of being sure that I didn't take anything from it since I was the last one who touched it. I didn't mind that, but I resented the fact that it created a hassle in filling out this form, and I just wanted to meet this cutie. They said that I needed to fill out the forms because when the owner comes to collect it, they need to have everything on the paper. They said that they would be in touch when the owner of the purse is identified. I went home romanticizing over what kind of person owned that purse and if we would ever meet. I took a bath and started winding down for a good night's sleep. I felt that I had done my good deed for the year. And then I heard the doorbell. Not once, but 3 times. Don't press it 3 times, that's annoying, I thought to myself. I opened the door wondering who the hell it might be out there at this time of night. It was winter, and to my surprise, a real beauty was stood outside wearing a red miniskirt. I responded, "Hey, what's up? Who are you?" "Excuse me. I lost my purse and I thought that maybe..." And they said this in a really quiet voice. "Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm the lucky guy who found it," I thought. And I couldn't believe my luck. I was shocked by the beauty of the person at my door. "I got all the papers from the police station. It should be all the proof you need." Yeah, just wait there a second and I'll go get the paperwork they gave me and we'll sort this out." I left the frame of the door to head back into my apartment to grab the paperwork from the countertop, and as I turned around, I saw the owner of the purse basically face to face with me in my own apartment. I was really taken aback. I hadn't offered them in, and it seemed quite brazen. Our proximity was insanely close, and our faces were nearly touching. "Aren't you kind?" she said. A smile crept across their lips as they released those words. Well, I'd want a stranger to do the same thing for me," I said. One word that could sum up that experience was eerie. Really eerie. I almost lost focus for a few moments. My head was swimming. It wasn't normal. Well, thank the Lord for kind people, huh? The smile seemed completely painted on at this point, if the lips were spread any further. Listen, it's kind of late, I said. It really freaked me out. I didn't even want to be alone in my own apartment after that visit from that stranger. About 3 days later, something dawned on me. The police said that they would be in touch as soon as the owner of the purse made contact. Something about that played on my mind, so I went to the police station a couple of days later to find out if the owner of the purse had been in touch. I went in and asked the officer that I had made the initial report with if someone had been in touch to claim the purse, and to basically ask why wasn't I contacted and why was my address handed over without me saying so. I had time to think about the situation and I was quite annoyed. But what the officer said shocked me. The owner of the purse hasn't been in touch. So the police didn't give out my address, I guess. Then the only way that someone would have known about the purse, me finding it and my address, was as if someone was following me. It seems as if the owner of the purse dropped it in the park and waited for someone to pick it up. It's the only way, right? The police were never contacted, so how? It really creeped me out. I didn't like to think about it, and I still don't like to think about it. I just try to forget about it. About a year later, once I had almost completely forgotten about all of this, I was walking home through the park, and I used to avoid that park, but I thought that it was fine since so much time had passed, and I kind of forgot. I saw the same person, in the red miniskirt, attempting to hide behind a telephone pole, just staring at me, watching everything I did. I hadn't gone anywhere near that park since that day. They watched me pick up the purse and then watched me from some hidden place to figure out where I live. And for what, I have no idea. Even today, when I see a red miniskirt, it brings out a less than positive reaction deep within me.
This happened when I was in the 2nd grade of elementary school. One night my parents had to leave to attend a wake, and they left me home alone to house sit. They told me that I was in charge of the house. I was to eat dinner, take a shower, and go to bed. They said they'd be back after midnight. I had never been alone in the house before. It was really strange, but I wanted to enjoy this new found freedom. So I was watching TV and feeling really powerful as I could choose whatever I wanted to watch. We live in the rural countryside of Kyushu. Our neighbors are a couple of minutes away, so nights are usually very calm and quiet. I think it was about 8 or 9 o'clock. I had just finished watching a TV show and the news came on. Boring, I thought. I guess it was time to take a shower and hit the hay. Then I heard a knock at the door. Oh, Mum and Dad's come back early, I thought as I went to the door. I looked through the frosted glass and saw a big shadow of a person there. My mum was only around 150 centimeters or 4'9" tall, so it couldn't be her. Maybe it's my dad, I assumed. I called out, "Hello?" And a deep male voice replied, "Hi, little girl. Is your dad home?" My dad was a bit of a drinker, and he often hung out with booze hounds. I thought that this might have been one of his pals or something. So I carelessly responded, "No, he's not here. He's at a funeral." There was a short pause. "And what about your mother?" I didn't know what to say. I knew my mum hung out with her friends, and they went drinking with my dad's friends sometimes, so maybe this guy knew both of them. But something inside me told me not to reply. I felt a bit suspicious. What do I do? I thought no matter what I would answer with, I might end up making another mistake or getting into trouble somehow. "Mum's not home either." The voice persisted. This was so strange. We never usually had people coming to the house at this time of night. It wasn't right. There was something about his voice too. It didn't sound like the local accent. This wasn't good. I felt extremely anxious, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything in response. "Are you alone in there, little girl?" I began to cry silent tears while standing stock still. "Can't you open the door for me? I have something I have to give to your dad. I'm just here to drop it off," he said in a voice so extremely sickly, the kind of voice you hear when someone's trying to coax someone into doing something. I mustered up enough strength to reply, "Can you come back tomorrow?" He didn't reply. He just started to violently turn the doorknob. I understood that man's intentions in that moment, and it felt like an arrow of ice went through my heart. My throat closed up, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. Then came the sound of his fist punching the frosted glass. "Open it," he roared again and again. I pleaded with him to stop, and I remember shouting out strange things like, "It's so loud." And then my brain kicked into gear, and I ran into the living room and grabbed the house phone. I didn't even know the number of the place where my parents were at. My parents had told me about people who call the police when they don't need their help. They called them hoax calls. I was nervous, thinking I might get in trouble for calling the police. They might say it was a hoax call. While panicking about what to do, I heard the glass shatter in the hallway. He had breached the door. A horrible thick arm shot through the hole. I remember he was wearing a jet black jumper. I screamed for help. I remember thinking this was more like a scene from a movie than real life. The arm was groping for the lock. While the arm was desperately probing for the lock, I heard another sound coming from outside. Someone shouting that they had called the police. I wandered back over to the door, and I saw the owner of this new voice, and I jumped for joy. It was the voice of the older lady who lived next door. She had heard all the commotion and came to see what was going on. As she shouted that she called the police, the man ran for it. I let her in. I was inconsolable. I was bawling my eyes out the whole night through. The police arrived about 30 minutes before my parents came back. When my parents did come back, they apologized again and again for leaving me by myself. In the end, we didn't know who the intruder was. My dad assumed it was a robbery attempt. Just as a side note, our town is located along the East China Sea in Kyushu, and there are a lot of suspicious ships around the ports. In addition, my town is famed for many unsolved missing person cases. We never found the man, but I often replay that moment in my head over and over. And thanks to that man, throughout my life I have had countless sleepless nights. I don't like to think about what might have happened to me if my neighbor hadn't been there. We became very close with my neighbors after this incident, and my parents never let me house sit again.
Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. EST, and there are super fun live streams every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night. If you get a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/letsreadofficial, and you might even hear your story featured on the next video. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations and bonus content over on Patreon, or click that big join button to hear about the extra perks offered for the channel. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all of these stories in big compilations and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. All links in the description below. Thanks so much, friends. And remember, it's fiendin' time.